welcome back to Espresso with Matt. I'm here with a wonderful leader, great mentor of mine, Mr. Don Parker. Don, thank you so much for joining today. How are you doing, sir?
Well, Matt, I want to get you on that first comment about mentor and mentee. I always felt like many times I was on the other side of that, and I was getting mentored by people around me. You have a lot of responsibility as a leader, and you never can cover all of the bases. And to have people who have expertise like you did in children and HR and bringing all those things together, I listened a lot and learned a lot from everybody around me.
Don, you were a great listener. I will say this. I always tell people, being an HR director under Don, you had to say a few times, like, Don, I'm not sure if we could do that. Often, but creativity was definitely one of your strong suits. So Don, before we get started, what are you drinking today? What you have in?
Matt, here it is. I am an inveterate green tea drinker. I've been almost all of my life. Once in a while, I throw a little flavor into the green tea and some bergamot oil or something like that. But I love green tea. It's great for you. It doesn't have a
Bergamot
lot of
oil.
caffeine.
What's bergamot oil? You said?
Bergamot oil, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
kind of a flavoring. If you drink Earl Grey tea, bergamot oil is the flavor that you're getting, and I like I like the green tea, so I just do it myself.
Awesome. Well, I have my traditional double espresso, and Don, when Don and I worked together at Carrier Clinic, Don was the CEO there. Don was always moving and going, and he would always heat his tea to an ungodly temperature of maybe 1,000 degrees. And you would often find his tea mug still in the microwave. And you determine how long Don's been to me about how hot his tea was. I don't know how you drank that. I really don't. I mean, often we were wondering if you were getting kidnapped because we couldn't find your where you were. We could always find your tea mug.
Well, Matt, I had a very early experience. I was a slightly preteen. I was living in Trinidad, and Trinidad was a British colony, and I just got into the habit of drinking tea, and it stayed with me all of my life. So it's genteel.
Well, Don, I will not do you justice, but Don was retired now, but was our CEO at Carrier, then the president of Hackensack Meridian Health. But Don, you have many, many, many years of experience in different realms. Give everyone kind of a Clifto version, if you can, of your career history and your summary, if you may.
Sure, Matt, I got a job. Luckily, I had borrowed my suit. I didn't have any money. I borrowed my suit from my dad, and my dad's 5'7", and so I had to lean over in a chair and do a really good interview without anybody seeing how short my suit was. And I interviewed for a job as a director of a detention center down here in Atlantic County. I was 23 years old. I had two kids already. I needed a job desperately. I got the job, and a year later, I asked the guy that I interviewed with. I said, "You obviously you didn't realize how young I was. What made you hire me?" And he says, "You gave the most intense interview I've ever seen in my life." And he said, "You leaned over the table and answered those questions, looked me straight in the eye." And I said, "You know what I was doing? I was hiding my dad's suit." So that was my first job, and I was off and running. I was a court administrator for a number of years and ran the juvenile and family courts for Atlantic and Cape May County. Then I moved on to become a president of a mental health center. From there, I merged it in with Atlantic Care. I became president of all the businesses outside of the hospital, urgent care and surgery centers, things like that. And I created all different kinds of new things there. And then I moved on. The CEO left. I was really, really, really close with him. And I wanted to launch out on my own. And so I ended up at St. Joe's Hospital for a short time. And then the Carrier opportunity came up, and I jumped all over it. So my 50-year career is full of all different kinds of experiences. And I would tell you, I didn't dislike any of my jobs.
Don, I gotta tell you, for first of all, that short suit launched a 50-year wonderful career. So absolutely, it's amazing what gets us our first job. I got over the years working with you we probably worked together for over 10 years at
Yep.
Carrier. Um, all your experiences were so rich and had such depth to them and such mission focus. You did a really amazing job and an amazing career. And I hope you wrote that down as a journal and biographies coming someday. I hope, Don.
Well,
Um,
Matt, I finished a book recently called Dysautonomia. It's about an unusual psychiatric condition that is caused by medical issues. It got me thinking about writing more books. My favorite all-time book is a book called Ambition, and it's about humility and ambition in the same person. And so what I'm doing is writing a book on ambition for kids. Kids, and starting it early. And the kids that are great athletes or great at anything they do sometimes lose sight of that humility part of the equation. And so I've spent a lot of time talking to my grandsons about it. They practice it, they know it. They tell me about their experiences in that area. I'm using a lot of what they've talked to me about to flesh out the book. So I expect about another year I'm going to be working on that as one of my sidelines, and I'll send you a copy.
Well, you heard it here, folks, and we're recording that, so I'm looking forward to that. And Don, I gotta tell you, one of the things about Don as our CEO, every time I walked into Don's office, he always had books up, and he had a whole bunch of books on his desk, a few books bookmarked, and I never left your office without you telling me to read some book. And and honestly, every once in a while, you drop off a book and say, "Hey, Matt, read this book. It's a great one." And it always impressed me how well read you were. Oh my God, here we go.
I'm doing that. I got, but Matt, I'm surrounded by books on addiction right now.
Yeah.
And, that's my new career. And, I just read insatiably. So,
And it's fascinating because you've been able to always kind of talk about things that to me, I'm surprised you haven't been on Jeopardy. I'll leave it at that because
you know what I watch every night?
what's that?
Jeopardy.
Yeah, yeah.
My wife and I watch it while we're eating dinner every night, and we see who answers more of the questions before the contestants. So I do like trivia. I'm going tonight with Renee Bunting, a good friend of mine,
Yeah.
and her husband out to trivia with one of the guys I used to work with, Larry Sherrod, who owns a winery now. So my wife and I go every Tuesday and Wednesday night to different places for trivia. So,
Well, if you're at the trivia tonight, don't bet against Don. He'll probably take you to the cleaners with the amount of books he reads. And I think about our work together when I was at Carrier. I was in HR, and you came on to Carrier with such energy. And I said this, I think, at one of your farewell receptions, that you were one of the first leaders I really worked with in behavioral health who thought in the idea of what is possible. Behavior health was so much about regulation, so much about risk management, that you kind of get into this mindset of we really shouldn't do that. It's too risky. Now, when you came on Carrier, you talked about the potential of Carrier, potential behavior health, potential of what we can do differently. And in many ways, I think you were really, really in front of your time because now you're seeing behavior health really start to develop some new trends in the last few 5 years. But you had talked about that forever. You were an innovator right from the beginning, and that really was inspiring for me to work with. Don,
thank you,
over
Matt.
your career, how have you kind of come to that mindset of trying new things, being able to be creative? What about that in your leadership tool belt kind of would you want to teach other leaders?
So Matt, I was a Navy brat. My father was in the military, and we traveled all over the world. I went to 11 schools in 12 years. Every year I'm moving. It could have been a meltdown experience, which it was for many kids, for me. And it didn't happen because I really focused myself on getting in, making friends, and then helping other kids adjust. And so social work was in my blood from the moment I started school. And when I graduated high school, I told my dad I was going to go to college for social work. He said, "I'm not helping you." He said, "That's not a career." He said, "That's for women," was his quote.
Oh my
And
God,
and
yeah.
I said, "Well, Dad, I'm doing it." So I did. I launched all off on my own. Worked a couple of years before I went to college, and then dug in and really enjoyed myself and made myself all the way through to to my master's in social work. So I really believe, and when I entered social work, I thought there was an enormous opportunity for creativity. My bones are built on creativity, and my career has been guided by that. And I could have been an artist or something like that, but I saw this field as a very very stodgy and staid experience. And when I started working, I was almost immediately an administrator because I was a male and I was, in social work, and there's not a lot of males in social work. I hate to say it, but it was a quick experience for me. So I spent very little time as a direct employee, and I started launching things. My creative brain started working right away. Got a lot of flexibility from the people I work for, and I delivered for them. And I'm still doing it now. I walked out of Hackensack Meridian into a startup that I've been involved in. I'll talk about that as soon as you ask me the question about it, Matt.
Okay. Well, we'll definitely come back because I know everyone's
Yeah,
asking like what's Don up to these days,
yeah.
and Don's retirement is probably busier than most people's mid careers, I'm sure. Yeah, but that creativity, that idea of taking on new challenges, you did that in your leadership style in such a positive, empowering way. Always talking about what we could do, not what we can't do. And I felt it was very empowering, and it was something I hadn't really experienced much in my professional career. So I thank you for that. And I think it's a great lesson about
Thank you.
in any field being creative, trying new things, trying new risks. They don't all work out. You don't always end up in the exact area you want to, but so much did, and so much creativity there. So it's an
Thank you, Matt.
amazing part of it. We talk about your leadership style. We talk about that you have a story for everyone. You have a conversation. But one of the other things that you brought forward really quickly that I realized this idea of servant leadership and really understanding people where they're at and how you can help others. It was kind of a core philosophy you brought to your leadership style. Where did you develop that? How did that become natural to you?
So I had some really good people that I worked for. One of them was a guy named Dick Williams, who was a judge at the time. He ended up being the chief judge for the entire state because he was so good. And I learned from him. He took me aside and said, "Look, your job is to make other people look better." And if you that by the way connects with the humility, and you shouldn't take credit for it. You should be helping people and then stepping aside so they can move beyond you. And so I've done that all my life. I identify people as such as you with great talent, and then I help, and I make sure that whatever I'm imparting is particular to them, is going to be helpful to them, that they can relate to. I think moving around in all the different cultures that I lived in, whether it was Europe or the Caribbean or all over the United States, helped me learn how to work with other people and from all walks of life and all different backgrounds. And it. I couldn't have planned it like this, Matt. A lot of this, in fact, I gave a lecture last week on luck in my career, and I've given it a couple times now in the last 6 months. And everybody says, well, that shouldn't be taught. Giving credit to luck for your career. It is. But here's the deal: harder you work, the luckier you get, and then the luckier you work, the luckier you get, the harder you have to work. And I really adhere to that. That hence the reading, hence the education that I give and I get, and it's a formula that's worked for me.
It absolutely has, and I think it's really impacted me and my leadership style of being able to move away from being that risk averse to saying, why can't we do something? Why shouldn't we try that? And really, I think the number one lesson I learned over the years was get the people around you better is the real definition of leaders. And I think if you measure your leadership successes, people start at one point and then after working with you, are they getting better? Are they better leaders? I think you have a great track record of doing that. And I think that's something that you absolutely impart me. I know I'm a better person, better leader because of the work that we had together, and I really appreciate it.
Well, you're very generous, Matt. I mean, I think that what I do is just help unearth the qualities that the individuals have. And for any, and maybe it's poor mentoring they've had in the past, or, a situation where the boss was authoritarian. I take those handcuffs off and I watch people bloom, and that's my satisfaction, my personal satisfaction is to see that happen. And I love when people leave and go on to other jobs, literally, because I know they're going to take good things with them, and they'll do good things. So,
well, I think that, again, we could talk about luck, and I think you described one time to me a Forrest Gump type approach, which I thought was a little understandable. But I get it, because I think it's sometimes being prepared for those opportunities and being prepared. When you do get that lucky, opportunity, are you ready to move forward with that? I think that's, again, everyone has opportunities. Sometimes the people don't seize on them, and
yep.
I really appreciate that. One last thing I want to get into. I really want to hear what you're doing from there. But throughout your career, you've talked a lot about the influence of others and mentors, and you've talked a lot about that. What does it mean to be a good mentor for a leader? Like, if someone's watching this today and they sat down and said, "I want to learn from you, Don, on how to be a mentor." What's that about? How do you become a mentor for someone?
I think it starts with observational skills. And I again, my both my training as a social worker and my experience in my PhD of life through the military was very beneficial for me. I learned from everybody, all different kinds of cultures. So when I head out to Oklahoma, where I travel now as part of my work, or down to West Virginia, my accent comes back. And I always blended in pretty quickly
Yeah.
in those areas. And so it's an observational skill, and that's hard. Leaders have a difficult time observing and then not acting on it immediately. I pack it away and find the right time at the right place to have a discussion about strengths, and it's just been a natural habit for me. So,
You're so good at it. I've learned that too, because I'm one of these type of people. If someone's telling me something, I'm trying to solve it right away. And even my wife will tell me sometimes, Matt, just listen. I don't need your solution. And I gotta realize, sometimes, yeah, just listening to someone, to what they have to say, and not trying to solve everything. Because I'm one of the ones who always is tinkering with things. Why don't we do it this way? Why don't we do it that way? And that's how my mind works. I work in the glass half empty type mindset. Like, what can we improve? And just listening as a leader is such a great skill.
listening
And
fills up your glass, Matt. That's what I used to tell people. I said, so if you listen, you won't have a half empty glass ever.
yeah,
Because people are going to tell you things. And hopefully, you can have a great enough relationship that they'll be honest with you. They'll give you, insight into themselves. They'll talk about where their foibles are. They'll talk about where their strengths are. They'll share those things with you. A lot of that I really honed becoming a social worker. I mean, when I was doing my education, uh, you know, uh, I was the only male in my graduating class in my master's in social work, and I listened. I had to listen because I was in a very different world for me.
yeah. Well, Don, I tell you, I saw a post, I think, on LinkedIn the other day about someone who's becoming a social worker today, went to school, and their grandfather said, "You can't become a social worker. That's not a real job."
Yeah.
And I actually posted back saying there are so many transferable skills from social work to leadership that we all can learn from.
Oh yeah.
And Don, I love the fact that you embrace that and you use that as a strength. Well, Don, again, you've had an amazing career, but you are into new things. I'm curious, what are you up to these days? What are you doing these days?
So another lucky situation. I'm speaking at a conference back this past January on the future of behavioral health at a think tank. I finished my speech, and a guy's coming up to talk about a program he was running. His name is Raphael Raskowski, and he is a a serial entrepreneur. He was running a program called Medically Home, where he took very serious patients who normally would spend extraordinary amounts of time in hospitals back to their home and take care of them. And he invented all different kinds of things to do it. He kind of elbowed me and said, Parker, he knew me a little bit. He said, Parker, let's meet at the bar tonight and let's talk about what you're thinking about. And so we did. We spent about 5 hours, closed the bar down, and started as a partnership. We were originally talking about a program called Recovery at Home, similar to what Raphael and I had both done, putting programs in people's homes. And then luck hit us almost immediately. Again. So we get an opportunity to go down to the Rockefeller Neurosciences Center in University of West Virginia. There's a doctor down there. His name is Ali Rezai, R-E-Z-A-I. Look it up. He just was on 60 Minutes not too long ago. And he has invented a technique to reduce cravings to none in addiction. And cravings are an enormous part of it. The cravings keep the process going. People's fear of those cravings keeps them from detoxing or sustaining their recoveries. It has a pivotal role in addiction. So I went down to West Virginia to watch him do some surgeries. He's developed a technique that lifts the blood-brain barrier, and so that you can map the nucleus accumbens, which is in the back of your head. And heretofore, it's not been really accessible. Because of a whole variety of reasons, not the least of which you can cause a stroke if you manipulate it, or you can create brain issues. So first of all, he maps that brain and he looks for dysfunctional neurons. Once he identifies the neurons, he then has a ultrasound system that allows him to pinpoint disable those neurons. And once he's done disabling, you're in a tube for about 15 minutes. The surgery is non-invasive. It's only an injection in your neck, and you come out not craving. Now, they've had over 100 patients go through this over a year now, and they've had 2 relapses in that group. And from our experience that you're generally hitting the 60%, and that's good performance.
Yeah.
Most programs are in the 70s. And so our company, it's called Addiction Recovery Science and Services, is going to, we hope, partner with the University of West Virginia. We're working there. We're working at the University of Oklahoma on developing partnerships where we first will start as alpha projects, helping to use this technique in a way through a franchise model, and then we'll be doing, we hope, all of the addiction treatment. So we are working now around opioid settlement dollars. Both West Virginia and Oklahoma were in the top 3.
Devastated by opiates. I mean,
Yeah.
the areas were devastated. Yeah.
Yep. So this is it. And then as soon as we started working on this, we had other people start talking to us about their science and whether it could be, melded into our initiative. So I just spent a significant amount of time this morning meeting with the whole team. We're looking at technology interventions. We're looking at medical interventions. We're looking at social interventions. So we are putting together a business plan at this point in time that we expect to have done sometime early in the second quarter, and next year launching the business. We expect to have some very significant partnerships with innovators. This is my encore career as an innovator, Matt, and I think it's going to be very successful.
Absolutely, Don. And again, getting back to what we talked about earlier, 10 years ago, you were talking about things in behavioral health before a lot of people were mainstream. You were talking about psychedelics 10, 15 years ago,
That's
and
true.
now they're starting to become mainstream. And so
Yep.
the idea of being able to treat, cravings medically in a way that you're talking about, is such a relief for people going through that awful disease of addiction. And then we can really do the work where they really focus on how they manage their emotions, because whether it's, drugs, food, whatever, you got to take those cravings away so you can get to some of the core issues that you don't with social workers. Don, best of luck with that. We're going to, root for you in there. That's really exciting stuff. And we have to keep our eyes open for that and keep us updated because, it's really going to be fast developments on there.
Thank you, Matt. I'm
Exciting
working
stuff.
with some of the brightest and best people in the business right now. And it all started with a discussion at a bar, ironically.
Yeah. Most good discussions over a cup of coffee or hot
There you
tea
go.
or, as you like your old fashions. Well, Don, we're just getting into our espresso round. So we have 4 questions we ask every
All right.
guest here. First question, best piece of advice you ever got over a cup of coffee over your career?
Yeah, my mentor talked to me about the concept of ambition, humility, and ambition. And there were no books written at that point in time. He was a judge, so he had the ability to not be very ambitious. And
Yep.
I mentioned before his name is Dick Williams, and he has been singularly the most influential mentor I've had in my career. And that concept allowed me, and still allows me, to both practice it myself and then to pay it forward. I've got, my son's got 4 great athletes among his boys, and I talk to them all the time about this. And as a result, I think they're having incredible careers. One of my grandsons won the state championship in wrestling last year, and I think it's a combination of, and he was a person who talked to me about paying it forward too. And so that influence I've never forgotten. It happened early in my life, so I've been able to use it for a long time. It's been incredibly beneficial to me.
Humble ambition. I
Yeah.
mean, that gets into that servant leadership, gets into that listening, but also the goals to achieve great things. And I think if you're working as a leader, achieving great, socially conscious, important things, that's a great term. Ambition. Love it.
Ambition.
Love it.
Yep.
You can go back and talk to your younger self over a cup of coffee. What piece of advice are you giving yourself?
Matt, I had kids when I was very young. My father's rule, 18 and graduation high school, whatever came first, you had to leave home. And so I did. And so I'm out on my own. I worked construction for a couple of years. I wish that I had figured out a way to go to college right away. I don't think I would have gotten married early. My first wife, by the way, passed away a few years later, and I ended up with 2 children. It was a rough start for me and my kids. And I would probably advise people, that's not a good way to start your life. And so I would do that all over again.
Okay.
So.
Great advice. We have a lot of leaders who listen to this, and over a cup of coffee, you're sitting with a leader. What's one piece of advice you'd give a leader today?
I think that part of what's made my career, a good career, has been fun. I have fun at work, and you know that, Matt.
I do.
I was just jonesing to be Santa Claus back at Carrier again. I was almost ready to pick up the phone and say, Trish, I'll come in as Santa Claus. And I can't do that. It's her show now. So if she wants a Santa Claus, it's her call. But being able to go out among the troops all the time and interact with them, and I think that came from me being a military brat. I used to go and watch Bob Hope all the time when we were overseas. He would drop in and he'd have a whole bunch of actors and actresses, and they would do great things, and they do it for the troops. They were out in the troops, and they went out afterwards and talked to people. I got to shake hands with Bob Hope and a whole bunch of different, stars over my life by being there with my military father. And I think that would be it, Matt.
And honestly, you brought a lot of fun in the networking, the fun, the connections was absolutely needed, especially in the social services when you're dealing with such tough situations. Having fun and enjoying the people you work with, so important.
Yep.
You can have a cup of hot tea, coffee, or beverage anywhere in the world with anyone, who you choosing? Where you going?
You know, I must say that I would go back to Jack Kennedy, and I was in Texas during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I remember everything that happened that time, and his resolute personality, uh, and the way that he handled that. I mean, we were on the brink of a nuclear warfare early in the game, and with no controls on it. And I, I, I've always admired the Kennedys and the family, and their unfortunate things that they've had to deal with in their lives, tragedies. But they always come back. They always find a way to help. So I would go have a cup of tea with Jack.
I will tell you, his "We're Going to the Moon" speech is one of my favorite American
Yep.
speeches, and I can't help but get choked up every time
Yep.
I hear that speech. I
Yep.
went to Kennedy Space Center for the first time this year, and they had that speech going, and man, I gotta tell you, it
It
brought
sends
emo
chills.
it
Yep.
really does. I mean, and you're like, when that was such an amazing leader. Hold on. I gotta tell you, this has been great catching up with you. We're gonna
Thanks,
have to
Matt.
do this again because we're gonna hear a lot more about this new company and this work you're working on here. If you don't follow Don on LinkedIn, I'm not sure how active you are on social media right now, but keep your eyes open for this stuff. Really great stuff. Don,
I'm on
any
LinkedIn now, Matt. I just joined Facebook. I mean, I'm, I don't know if I can keep up with everything, but I'm on them.
well, Don, I hope we'll definitely have you back as a guest because I want to keep you updated on this, and there's so much more wisdom to share with them. Thank you so much for joining us today, Don. Have a great day and happy holidays to you and your family and all those grandkids. I'm sure are going to keep you busy over the next few weeks.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Matt. And it's really great to see what you're doing, yeah, and how you're sharing your wisdom with other people as well. I mean, it's paying it forward. That's our obligation as social workers and people who work in human services, and should be everybody's obligation.
Absolutely. Well, Don, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Matt.